time to engage. Here we are talking about, let's try to keep this straight, episode 4 of Star Trek Discovery and 5 of the Orville. So these episodes are named Pria for the Orville and The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry for Discovery, which, you know, is, we're getting very, I don't want to say...
It's becoming a parody itself, the
right?
Discovery.
Oh my god, that's...
a perverted, you know, a twisted parody.
Yeah. If you wanted to know for sure that it was going to take itself very seriously, it had that name. All right, everyone, so I'm Matt, massive Trekkie. Sonia, also a huge Trekkie. Vanya, also a great big Trekkie. Here we are. We're very excited to be talking about this. And so you guys, this is our chance to really communicate. Hop online, tell us what you thought about this. Every time we're saying something that seems like, oh, Matt doesn't know what he's talking about. Or, oh, Vanya, what'd she come up with that from? Or Sonia doesn't know what she's saying. Just come on, let us know. We want to know what you think.
You could also say that, give us compliments.
Yeah, by all means. Wow, Matt, that was correct, is also allowed.
Yeah, Vanya really knows her stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so the exciting thing about this is that we've got some real Trek alumni, specifically on the Orville, to talk about this week. Jonathan Frakes, Riker, Commander Babyface himself.
Yay.
Everyone, did it feel even more like Star Trek?
Yes.
The Orville, what did you think? Was it more like Star Trek than ever?
In
I don't know.
atmosphere.
Go ahead, Vanya, please.
In atmosphere, it definitely was.
Right?
Like, it took to another level, yeah.
I think so too. What about you?
I'm still getting used to the balance between the seriousness and the parody. I think it was the wormhole and that science.
Yeah.
That aspect of science that made me feel like maybe it was a little bit more Trek this week.
Yeah, it certainly had the most solid, like modern interpretation of a wormhole or a black hole. I thought that was interesting. There was some real interstellar style to that wormhole. That was an interesting choice because, yeah, it certainly made it feel a bit more serious because nothing so serious quite like Chris Nolan. Why so serious? Always so serious. I don't know. I don't know. But let's get into the characters. In Discovery this week, I wouldn't say we really had many new characters. We got to meet the Doctor a little bit, which was cool. Yeah, so that was exciting. But really, it was just about getting deeper into some of these characters. Vanya, what did you think?
The Klingons.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and some Klingons. Good point.
Yeah.
So, Vanya, what did you think?
About the characters?
Yeah. Where they went, how we felt about them.
I still feel like Stamets, Anthony Rapp, is still throwing me off a bit. Like, I still need him to reel it in a bit. Yeah,
it's still very, like, musical theater Broadway going on, it feels like.
And then there's, like, a quick switch. Like, he did a bit of a switch where he was very dramatic about something when he was holding the phaser, and then he was like, oh, hey, you're right.
Yeah,
and I was like,
that's true.
Oh, it was just so jarring. I was just like,
when he wanted to shoot at least be able to shoot at the water bear without necessarily shooting at him.
Yeah.
And then he had a fun little zinger. Although, on the topic of zingers, Captain Malfoy had another good one this week that I really enjoyed. When he just looked at everyone who said, "We'll do better, sir," and they were just like, "It would be hard to do worse."
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much. I like that he's got these like funny moments because there aren't many at all, and they're always mean.
Yes.
They're always mean jokes.
Relentless.
Yeah.
Relentless.
Another thing about the characters I thought was I just want them. I want them to get along. I'm craving them to like each other.
Yeah.
A bit more. I mean, there were some moments where, like, I mean, again, it was like Tilly and Burnham again having like, there's obviously they have a respect for each other and gentleness, which is nice. And Stamets and Burnham, they seem to. He's respecting her, obviously, but I still am like, oh, it's so cold. It's so cold on Discovery.
Yes,
it's chilly.
I would have liked to see Burnham and the security chief a little bit more. Their dynamic, I thought, might be interesting to watch.
Okay, now we're getting into spoilers here. If you're watching this show before the show, I would call that a mistake, but it's your life. I'm not going to live it for you. Rekha Sharma's character, our beloved security guard, dies a water bear mauling death that puts like Leonardo DiCaprio to shame because this water bear just tears the shit out of her. And when the Doctor just looks over and is like, I was like, oh, we're just killing her.
Yeah, we're just done.
Rekha Sharma was on three or
shows.
maybe 3.5 seasons of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And so for her to be gone in 2 episodes, I was like, whoa, I can see how you're trying to like give me a Game of Thrones, no character is safe kind of choice, but I didn't care yet about the character you murdered. So that didn't work so well for me from a character perspective. It's funny, Melissa and I were talking, and you and I were talking about this. There were 2 scenes between Michael Burnham and Rekha Sharma's character that were the exact same scene. And I don't know why they needed to go back to beginning that scene again just to give it a slightly different ending. Where it's like this time I try to go kill a water bear. That was weird.
And may I say that even though they went back twice and they talked about, and so Burnham was trying to understand how the beast could help. And eventually she figured it out, but neither of those 2 scenes made it clear. Were used effectively to make it clearer than it was in the end. So that was a shame. So it just seemed like a lot of lost moments.
Yeah.
It was pretty. It was a shame on so many levels. It was a shame because it's like 2 women of color that are playing roles that are very different than women of color get to play on television, and they're having this conversation, and we're like, okay, these are 2 intelligent women, but then they're not listening. One of them's not listening to the other, and it's just like everyth's just wrong.
And then when their second scene is just the first scene again, it was really disappointing. I wanted to see their relationships changing in this episode, and we saw a couple change, but not very many. Computer, does anyone have something to say?
Yes, someone is noting that for a show with so many people of color, it's especially women of color, it's still largely white men speaking.
Yes, white men, whether they're covered in makeup or not, have a lot to say on this show. Threat ganglia aside, there's a lot of white men talking. It was nice to see that we have a doctor who's a person of color.
Yes. That was
cool, and hopefully he doesn't get murdered in the second episode he shows up in. Because, again, that's not going to get us invested in the characters. The other thing that's very cool is that we had a director of color on this episode, and I am going to try to say his name, Olatunde Osunsanmi, who is very steeped in genre television. So this is a man who, has done some episodes of things like, off the top of my head, I know that he did a couple of episodes of, here we go, Extant, he did one of those, Under the Dome, Minority Report, a Colony, like Bates Motel, he did a couple Bates Motels, so he plays in different genres. And so I think from a directorial standpoint, this episode worked.
Why, Matt? Why do you think it worked?
Because all of the action was clear. There were points of action, especially in the pilot, and thank God they fired that cinematographer. There were points where that director and cinematographer were giving us imagery that was not clear. This one was clear.
Yeah, you could really notice that the director had control over what was happening.
But the director can only work with what he or she has, and that script to me was not as clear as the visuals were.
No, and as per usual, there's 6 writers credited on this. One of them is dead, and 2 of them have been fired, and one of them's staff. So I think only 2 of them actually wrote it.
One of them is dead.
Gene Roddenberry. Oh! He's credited as a writer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's created by. So technically he wrote all of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Brian Fuller, for the same reason, is credited for that. Kurtzman's credited for that reason as well. Computer?
Derek Culliford is joining us again.
And Derek, welcome back.
Hi, Derek.
He's wondering why didn't they do to Commander Landry what they did to Burnham after she was exposed to the radiation?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting that I guess Burnham wasn't dead yet when she was put in that slow-moving thing that put her back together, and that was an old ship. I like to think that the Shenzhou had a modern medbay, but somehow I guess Landry was dead by the time she got there. Because it was a site-to-site transport.
Yeah.
So if that's not going to get you to the hospital on time, nothing will. I guess she was just already dead.
Yeah.
It's not like she was moving a lot before the transport.
Yeah.
So
that's what
I think she was just straight up dead.
She was already gone.
Yeah, and if she had been beheaded, maybe it would have been a bit clearer. But you're right. The damage just looked like a bunch of surface scratches. And Leo was fine after that, so I don't know. So we were talking about the writing, and I think you've got a very good point. This episode, much like the previous few episodes, not written so great. Some crap dialogue.
Yes, it's true. Some very cliched moments, but also just they wasted time. They wasted time on those moments. You know, when they could have used it to better explain what was happening, how Burnham got to where she got. It wasn't a great experience for that reason, because I just found that they weren't talking. They weren't saying the right things. There was a lot of talking. They weren't saying what I needed to hear to understand it better.
Well, and on the topic of writing, let's talk about Seth MacFarlane's work on the script for the episode Pria, because he got to write for yet another one of his Hollywood buddies, Charlize Theron. So it was a serious guest star role. You know, we were talking about how, you know, there was that sort of Jesus on tape moment with Liam Neeson last week. But this week we get the whole episode. Charlize was there.
Yes.
Interesting character. I think we were talking a bit about this earlier, that it sort of delivers on the promise of Matt Frewer's character in The Next Generation in the episode A Matter of Time, when he plays Rasmussen, this time traveler from the future who's really not. Yeah. And so the bait and switch in that one is different than the one in this, where we get this time traveler from the future and we don't know it yet. It's not until, again, the third act that we really get that switch and the plot goes into overdrive.
Yeah, I mean, her character is reminiscent of a couple other TNG characters too. Like Vash. She's very similar to that, because she's working with archives, but she's also into money and that sort of thing. So
and
that kind
into
of
the captain.
And into the captain, and they have a relationship. So I was thinking about her a lot. And also, I think it's called Legacy in TNG with Data and Tasha's sister, where there's like a switch where you think that there's a person has like altruistic, you know, values or whatever, and then they get you in the end. Even to so much so, spoiler, even so much so to the last thing that is said between, you know, the love interests at the end, where he is like gets rid of her right away without thinking about it, just like Data. You know, energized when he's done. He's done. It's very similar.
And that was an interesting moment, because I could not tell, and I don't know if this was Jonathan Frakes or Seth MacFarlane or meant to be ambiguous, but in the storytelling in that moment, I couldn't tell if Charlize Theron's character, if Pria disappeared, and therefore the timeline never existed, and Seth MacFarlane's character, Captain Mercer, has no memory of her, or if he just was having a moment of like kind of regretting or thinking about the severity of the decision. I couldn't get a read on the actual timeline results, because they didn't die.
Right.
If she had no effect on them, then they would have gone through this dark matter storm and died.
Right.
But they didn't, or she was lying. So there's so many different balls up in the air with a character that's this duplicitous that it's hard to know what happened in that last scene. Maybe we'll see her again, maybe we won't, and maybe we never saw her at all.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, maybe she's like a Vash character that will like return and then be this love interest thing again.
Speaking of characters, can I just mention that you know, at one point Captain Mercer says, "I think I have a plan." And the plan is lame.
It's a terrible plan.
It's a terrible plan. And I'm not used to the captain of the ship not having the answer, or at least not having a potentially successful plan, you know?
And in the first beat of the scene, was it screwing up? It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Yeah. Very enjoyable.
I thought about that too, because, you know, because the episode also reminded me of a Voyager episode with Janeway, where she's in a situation where she's kind of like deceived by somebody who sees her as like a love interest, and then she knows that the person is not, you know.
Yeah, she steps ahead because Janeway's a more competent captain.
And so it made me think of, when you say that it's like the lame plan, like Janeway would never have like a lame plan like that. It's something that you're kind of like.
It's kind of the great conceit of this of the Orville. It's not the captain of the flagship. Yeah. It's not the commander of the most important station. It's not this like brilliant science officer who is in charge of this exploratory vessel. It's a like middle of the road ship with sort of a crap captain. And I think that's kind of the charm that this show has, and how we get away with the comedy.
Maybe that's why I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's a great point. I think that's very much the reason to enjoy it, because Star Trek's been like desperately trying to find how to change it. How do you make your next one different? How do you make Archer not just another Kirk? Right. Well, this is how. You don't have another like strapping I'm off to go discover everything character. You have a like slightly busted guy or woman at the helm, and in this case you get both. And I think that is what makes the Orville feel familiar and yet not. It's nostalgic without being derivative. Like it doesn't feel just openly derivative in the way that sometimes Star Trek feels derivative of itself.
I can see that.
I think that's something very neat about it, and especially with what they are able to do with the comedy. Even in the opening sequence where they begin the episode with a Seinfeld episode.
That's very funny.
That was remarkable.
Being a Star Trek and a Seinfeld fan, I was like, yay!
They're
together. Yeah, but at the same time, I still, even though I think that this was probably even more like a level up for them as a Star Trek kind of episode, I am still having like a little bit of misbalance. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, oh, do you want me to take you seriously now? Like, for real? You know what I mean? And then, like,
a practical joke.
And then you're kind of like, so I keep, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to keep me on my toes.
Well, it's comedy. It's a new thing, right? It's comedy with stakes on a starship.
Yeah.
Like, that's weird, but awesome. Yeah. And I mean, even just little one-liners like Bortus made me laugh out loud in that opening sequence where Seth MacFarlane says, oh, like someone rides their bike and then they fall off it and hit themselves in the balls. That's funny. And Bortus just quietly to himself, I would agree. And it's just like, that made me laugh out loud in the opening sequence. I thought that was wonderful. Although on the sort of topic of derivative, Isaac going down his like Data style journey of understanding comedy. He did something
with Joe Piscopo and the Next Generation. I'm sorry, you just reminded me. Joe Piscopo was on with Data and teaching him how to do stand up.
Yeah, Guinan and trying to show him the ropes.
And it was funny in this because Isaac did something so incredibly horrid, but genuinely funny.
I thought at first I was horrified, and then I went,
"Oh, it's the
why
future.
am I laughing?"
It's okay.
No, and then I started to laugh, and then I
it's a good practical joke.
Yes, I thought. Well, it's good because it's science fiction, right? And so you can regenerate.
And I love the like weird wobbly leg that he's got after. So gnarly. It was such a it was a good Deadpool joke. Like that moment where Deadpool grows his baby hand back.
Yeah.
And it's like it had that kind of vibe to it, and I really enjoyed the humor of that like wobbly gross leg.
It obviously has us because we're laughing about it right now. Like we're talking about all these points that are really funny, right?
Yeah, and I almost didn't mind the fact that the practical prop of that leg was like easily a foot more leg than
he lost.
I don't know. Or, it could be something to do with the way the future amputates things. I don't know. But yeah, that prop did not so much match the visual effect. Now, the visual effects in Discovery this episode were very interesting because the last time we saw the water bear, I keep calling him that, the tardigrade. The water bear, we saw him in the dark almost entirely. Yes. But in this episode, we got to really see this monster in broad ship light. And he was pretty decent. Like, I liked the effect on him more so than I thought I would. Because he was so in the dark in the previous one. I wasn't sure if that was for horror reasons or for we can't afford the visual effect reasons.
Right. A lot of the visuals really stood up for me. Like, they were really good in Discovery this week. Like, a lot of things that I thought were kind of dodgy in the previous episodes, I thought that it really kind of, softened or whatever this week. And the Klingons I even liked more.
Well, I feel like the fact that Takuvma wasn't in there helped a lot because his mask is like the biggest, most ridiculous one. Yeah. And so Cole, it felt like, had a bit less. Vok doesn't seem to have quite as much on his face, and none of the female characters seem to have as much sheer amount of latex.
Can we talk about how it's hard for the characters, the Klingons, to show emotion with their masks? Yeah. And one thing though that happened in this episode was that maybe was the actors very good expressing things with the rest of their bodies and their eyes. So I found them. Can you say male and female in this case? So Takuvma's
Vok, his heir.
His heir. So he and that woman. There was something happening there that was interesting. That was, I thought, okay, well, here's some
maybe
human
this
emotion.
is Klingon romance. Yeah.
But still, it's very difficult for Klingons to express themselves with the way that they're being outfitted.
And they're buried under visual effect makeup.
And they've always been like the most expressive group in Star Trek, which is totally a bummer. Like as soon as you said it, me and Matt were like, like we're bummed out, right? Because it's like they're the most expressive.
Yeah, Michael Dorn. You never had to wonder what Worf was feeling.
Well,
it was so clear.
It's been turned on its head, right? Because we've got speaking of other characters, we've got this general as a captain, as opposed to an explorer.
Yeah.
He's very aggressive. Aggressive in that he's...
Well, he's in it to fight a war.
Yeah.
That's his thing. And it was interesting to watch the... I can't remember the name of the class of starship that... the Discovery is the Crosstown.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the fact that the bits in it spin, it reminds me of Voyager's weird moving nacelles for no reason except to move a nacelle.
Or a fidget spinner. Like I was like, really?
Oh my God, Lorca has the world's largest fidget spinner.
I was just like, whoa, it's sign of the times.
Just a quick aside, in the visuals in the Orville, I really loved it when those bubbles, when they went through that
was pretty beautiful.
I thought that was cool.
It was nice.
I like the look of
that dark matter bubbly thing was a really awesome thing to watch happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoyed that effect.
Cool, yeah.
And the hologram of Giorgio.
Yeah.
As the, do you think they were thinking of using it as sort of a contrast? She, still seeming like the explorer.
Yeah.
The one who believed in the science and the exploration.
Yeah.
As opposed to this General Lorca who is using science, the science of Star Trek, for war.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the pilot, we found out that Michelle Yeoh's Giorgio character is a soldier and an explorer. And so that hopeful characteristic seemed to always win out in Philippa. Yeah. But in Lorca, it seems all he's ever been, I guess, is that, because we haven't really gotten much depth other than I'm a warrior, I'm a general, I'm working in time of war.
And he's always eating, sorry.
Yeah, he's always eating, and there's always food right next to the tribble. Like, the man is living dangerously. I don't get the choice to keep food right beside it.
Dangerously.
Computer, do we have anyone asking any questions, giving us any comments?
We have a comment that the Discovery is a Crossfield class.
Crossfield, thank you, that's it.
And also a suggestion that a drinking game where you drink every time they say Takuvma would be very dangerous.
Oh my God. That would be...
Because it's non-stop Takuvma.
Well, he's like the new Kahless, where it's like in Kahless's name. Kahless. Like, we used to hear Kahless all the time, but now that Takuvma exists, they're going to have to find a way to erase his memory. Because if Takuvma, by the end of Discovery, isn't completely disgraced, why did anyone ever not talk about him?
Right.
Takuvma's this massive thing now. Although it seems like Kol is specifically trying to take all of Takuvma's people and resources and turn them into his. I'm glad this character with the blood down his face. It looked like blood because we saw it before like that, but it's in the same spot. So now I'm wondering if it's just like a tattoo or war paint or like some kind of disfiguration he's got.
Right.
And he's from the House of.
The House of Bloody Eyes.
Right, because they have that still.
You would hope.
You would hope, but
and in the original, not the original, like the second iteration of Klingons, the ridges on their heads were a family resemblance that each of them had, and they would, when they were trying to give characters new identities, they would change their ridges so they would look like a different family.
Yes.
I am so far not seeing family resemblances, but maybe we haven't seen families yet.
That's right, but there's so many things happening now. With Klingons, at least that's what you could focus on.
Yeah.
You could focus on this aspect of them.
And that they're... and their personality.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not so much of that.
Because they could express themselves properly.
Exactly.
And even the constant repetition of their, their warrior values was not as grating as tiresome to me as the constant takufma and the constant repetition of their
new dogma,
these new dogma,
basically. Computer?
Yes, Sam Gerard wonders when the Klingons will look humanish again as well, and says, "I'm sure the Federation will unleash that bio-warfare again."
Right? Yeah, we need some of Sung's like vicious, horrible. We need some of that to happen. Some human-looking Klingons, so that the eugenics war elements can happen again.
Unless in the writing for Discovery, unless that's what they wanted us to be disconnected from the Klingons, like further disconnected to make them so alien to, the humans that, maybe that's a new way of...
And you know what? If they named them something other than Klingon...
I knew you were going to say that. I actually knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, that's the problem. If you want to pick something like Klingons to bring us in, like Spock's sister, if you want to bring us in with that kind of stuff, you really need to make some good use of it. And so far, not the best use of Klingons. It is interesting that they do still refer to them as birds of prey. Their ships. So that's cool, I guess. We get the name, it's just that they look nothing like they used to. But they do still kind of look like birds, although they look, to me, a bit like something out of Stargate. Like, they look like the little Horus flyers. It's kind of weird. So let's bring this around to what we got on the Orville insofar as, like, visual effects. Because... the thing about the Orville is that we can sometimes get so excited about the characters that we know now, because we've had, 5-6 episodes to really get to know them. And in this, we got to see all of the characters doing wonderful things, but we got some really neat visual effects. We got a wicked tag off the top as the Orville is diving after a meteorite falling into a star. Like, there was some high action in this. And it's not just comedy. There are stakes, even if Pria said no one was in real danger. But at the time, it feels like stakes. Yeah. And what do you guys think about the fact that we're really getting sci-fi action, high-concept sci-fi action out of the Orville?
Oh, I'm loving it. I tell you, I love that dark matter. It was dark matter, right? I love that. I was really taken in by the new design of the wormhole. And thank God, because I'm finding the ship itself to be disappointing. First of all, it doesn't sound like there's enough noise. There's no ship noise on it. I don't know what it is. There's no TNG ship noise.
No
Forgive
hum.
me. There's no hum. There's something about the hum.
Just like Scotty, he wants to know what warp they're traveling at by the sound of the hum, right? What did you think about the flying spaghetti monster? Because at the very end, there's this, like, wacky creature that Priya's trying to sell the Orville to, and it's clearly an actual flying spaghetti monster? What did you think about this? Like, we got to see the 29th century for a second there.
Yeah, I felt like, again, I was brought out and I was like, oh yeah, comedy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's what it did for me, at least. But, it's fun. It's funny. And, like, it's exciting. I thought that their special effects really helped with the pace of the show was different. Yeah. And the special effects, like, lent to that, So
I've got to say, the visual effects on the Orville seem much better than most of the visual effects happening on Discovery. And I don't know if it's because I'm streaming one of them over iTunes and the other one over CBS All Access, but the beginning of Discovery trying to, like, give us some excitement with the crystalline electricity and stuff. I don't know if that was specifically trying to call back to episode 4 of The Next Generation on the like Takan Empire crystalline things, just to, like, visually give us a thing that made us think about another episode 4. But I didn't see the need for that kind of, I'm not going to call it bad CGI, but, like, unnecessary CGI when she could just reach over and grab yet another shirt. Like, she's 2 for 2 on, hey, we need to see how she gets a new shirt. There are other things you could be showing us on Discovery other than this is how our lead character replicates a new shirt. Computer, is there something you guys have to say?
Derek says that the dark matter storm was similar to Star Trek Next Generation episode The Trap.
Yeah. Good
nice
point.
call.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. But the idea of getting trapped in that kind of, and in this case, it's entirely possible that Pria laid the trap and was just lying about how they got stuck in this, oh, you were supposed to die there, because just like Mercer said, if you hadn't redirected us, would we have gone through that? Would we have died in that anyway?
I agreed with him there,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, as prepared as she was for it, I don't know. When you have a character, again, that is full of lies, it's really hard to know when you sit back, even when you rewatch the episode, it's really hard to know which beats are happening because they're what Pria says is true and which beats are not actually true, and how is she subverting people's expectations, and how is she manipulating everyone. It's neat. I'm hoping that Pria becomes a bit like a Joseph Ron from Firefly, where this character that is a bit of a thorn in the captain's side and begins as like an almost love interest and then antagonist. It would be neat if she comes back and continues to find a way to travel back in time and be not so much a story arc but a nice recurring character.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
That'd be a lot of fun.
I think Discovery continues to have like a pacing issue, and as far as like the visual effects, I think on the Orville are like, because it's so bright, it's such a bright show. Like they're the exact opposite. Like the Orville's so bright, and Discovery is so dark and steeped in darkness in tone and visual effects. Yeah, and so I feel like that's why, it seems with the Orville, like, we're seeing everything. It's it's lending to the pace. The Discovery is, like, completely in the dark.
Yeah. And it's interesting how the light is anathema to the water bear. Right? Yeah. That's how she controls the water bear by turning the lights up. And so, obviously, they got the water bear into the what would you call it?
Containment field?
That's it. Well, not the containment field. Remember when they had to put it in that little water bath almost? They had to, so that it
into its weird little like nipple holster.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
It's like the chamber. It's like a
chamber.
Yeah.
Containment chamber. Yeah. Anyway, yes, I thought it was interesting that the light is what stops that frightens that.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting thing because it eats things that are bright.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess it depends how bright and what kind of bright, maybe? But I did find that a bit strange. I liked watching them get to the idea that the supercomputer was the water bear.
Yeah.
I don't love when the audience is ahead of the super intelligent members of the team that should be knowing this stuff, because Star Trek, when it's at its best, is competence porn. These people are so good at what they do.
Right.
Let's watch them use science and technology to be great. Yeah. And why am I ahead of them?
Right.
That I found a little bit disappointing. Yes. Did you guys find yourself in that same spot where you're like, come on, get to the water bear being the...
Yeah, because it called back to though also, well, not necessarily like the help that it could actually help them, but like it was like what's that original Trek episode, Devil in the...
With the Horta?
Yeah. So it was like that. Yeah. And the fact that she's so connected to Vulcans, and that's how, it was Spock that actually tamed the beast, and then she's the one who tames the beast. It was that was nice. That was real Star Trek for me. But then, the one thing that is like the saving grace, I feel like, is Sonequa, her acting when he was in his nipple holster.
Yeah, his nipple harness.
You can see that she was saddened and you can actually feel that. That was great. That's like a highlight,
She's an interesting character. I wish we could see
her
more. I hope we continue to see her in more complex situations. More situations where she gets to show. Where she's challenged, where that Vulcan teaching,
where the episodes are more economical, where everything that they do
is tight for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Throwaways.
I mean, no waste.
I've been watching the one new episode of Discovery a week, and then I've watched an episode of The Next Generation and the original series, just to try to keep on track with how these characters are being revealed to us. And it's hard to divorce what you know already of these characters from what's being shown to you for the first time. But I must say that those 2 hours of the pilot being space battle and a bunch of characters that die puts Discovery at a huge disadvantage when it comes to knowing the cast. There's some kind of android thing on the ship now that's like it looks like she's basically an iMac. And then there's you know, the redheaded
redhead with
the one that's got like the buzz
Shenzhou.
here and the thing, and the one that didn't sound like she knew what she was saying in the first episode, but is now starting to like get into it. I feel like all these characters, like the Doctor, we got to meet a lovely Doctor of color on the Shenzhou, and now we get to meet another one. But if it was the same Doctor, we would know him a little bit more. You know, when you look at Dr. Phlox, that was a character that by episode 4. You frigging love that guy because he had enough screen time. And this show is clearly not about the big 3, the big 5, and the big 7 in the way that it's about, you know, Spock and McCoy and Kirk. And then you work your way out and it's also about Sulu and it's about Uhura. And then you work your way out and it's about like more and more and more characters. This is not doing that as much because we've only seen some of these characters for 2 hours, and some of them have died already.
and it started off with those great moments between Philippa and Roger. I loved it, and that's why it's so disappointing that they are not getting a chance. We're not getting a chance to see them together because they really brought out the humanity in each other.
And at the end of this episode, 4 hours in, we get to see the last will and testament of Philippa, obviously recorded before the mutiny.
But I don't know if that was a mistake, because it's such a bummer, because I'm like, well, I really do wish that Michelle Yeoh was the captain of this ship. You know what I mean? Again, like, if we're being reminded of things from the past of just 4 episodes, and then we're already, like, I'm already nostalgic for, you know, Philippa Georgiou.
Yeah, and I don't know. Could they have made a woman, a general, a war-hungry or war-obsessed
Well, it seems like Lorca's boss is a female, so that's interesting. We got to see this hologram of his the admiral in charge of him.
Where she's like mildly annoyed that he's eating him.
Yeah, it's like breach of protocol. Don't mind me.
That's what I mean about the economical thing. It's like clean that stuff up. Who cares? I don't like. Just,
you're trying to give him
or do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Do something with it because they've shown it a few times with him there, but they never go anywhere with it.
Maybe he has a tapeworm, and that's going to be an important part of his character. I don't know.
It's taking too long. Economical. That's the word. We are directing.
And who would have thought that Seth MacFarlane's writing would be more economical and give you more character depth than 4 hours of like dozens of writers of Star Trek. So let's talk about whether these episodes. I think it's time to go to Red Alert. Let's talk about whether these episodes trekked it or wrecked it. Red Alert. I like this. Okay, so the Orville gave us a time travel episode, Time Traveler from the Future. Jonathan Frakes was directing it. Seth MacFarlane wrote it. Trekked it or wrecked it?
It trekked it. It did.
With any reservations?
Yeah, always. Always with the Orville, my reservation is always this. It's tapping into my nostalgia. It's tapping into my TNG nostalgia or my original Trek nostalgia. And I don't know if that's, like, good. You know what I mean? I don't know if I want to just give over to that because I want new stuff. I want fresh stuff. So, yeah, it definitely trekked it. But is it, I know you're saying, like, it's not that derivative, but in a way, it does have that, like,
that nostalgia's there.
Me. So I always have to go into it cautiously.
Okay.
Always.
Sonia, did the Orville trek it or wreck it?
This one trekked it for me more than the others one. The other ones did. I think for the visuals and because Seth MacFarlane was economical in those long silly jokes he can take. So I thought that this one trekked it.
I agree. This episode of the Orville totally trekked it. I think Pria was an episode that gave us what Gene Roddenberry wants Star Trek to be, and it felt like we got a new plot. It had some plot points that were familiar, but I did not know what was going to happen. It's not so derivative that I knew what was going to happen. And to me, remixing Star Trek into the next Star Trek episode, when you've got 6 shows and like dozens and dozens of seasons and story arcs, and you can still make something that feels fresh, that's huge for me.
It was less fresh for me, you know, because it did remind me of like Vash and Legacy so much. Those episodes
that
are
seemed
still
derivative.
Yeah, that I was like, okay, still like I know where you're going. I know what you're doing.
So before we decide, before we pass judgment on Discovery, computer.
Derek would like us to know that the episode trekked just barely. He felt it was a filler episode.
A filler episode. Interesting. Well, it's clearly a guest star. It's a guest star episode designed to bring people in. Those, certainly on Battlestar Galactica, those filler episodes with a guest star were ones that had nothing to do with the overall plot. But this doesn't have a story arc in the same way. So I don't particularly mind that. But let's get down to Discovery.
All right.
So we're talking about 4 hours in. We're really starting to see who these characters are. But some of them are still dying out of the blue. Vanya, trekked it or wrecked it?
It trekked it.
Okay.
Again. Gosh.
With reservation.
Always. Apparently, neither of them got it for me yet. But yeah, I want to love the characters more. I like her, but I feel like Star Trek to me is more about a bigger thing. It's more of a crew working together, and even if it is towards like winning a war, it should still be coming together. I just want it to gel more.
Okay, Sonia, trekked it or wrecked it?
Wrecked it.
Oh, tell us.
I wrecked it, and I'll say again, I found the writing problematic. I found that it was not economical enough. They wasted time. The characters themselves are not defined enough to really become attached to them. Never mind the relationships. People are dying, but even the individual characters, they're still so one-dimensional to me. I find it's just relentless destruction, and so there's not enough. The balance is off on this one for me on Discovery in other ways than it is in the Orville, but this one didn't work for me. This episode didn't work for me. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that between the like super cheesy weird ending of the daughter and father looking up to the sky talking about how they just got saved, and the fact that when you kill your security chief, it should feel as brutal as the death of Tasha Yar did. And I didn't come close. And I already like Rekha Sharma.
But we don't know that character.
Yeah, we don't know the character, and you can't do that. We've seen it done well in Trek, and this was not it. Again, Vanya, I agree with you that these characters aren't working together in the way that feels like Trek. They're working at cross purposes and fighting to get something done. And it's not Trek to me, so I gotta say this wrecked it.
And even the way Rekha Sharma died, I mean, she was
like a bit of a chump.
But she wasn't smart. I
No,
mean, she wasn't
really
like a Star Trek character in the sense that she was smart.
Yeah.
About everything. And she didn't listen. They don't listen to each other. It's so
Computer?
Derek feels that Discovery trekked it, but he thinks they need to stop focusing on Burnham's mutiny in order to move the series forward.
I think you got a good point there, Derek.
Point.
I think this whole idea of Burnham's past, I don't care.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Okay, moving on. I want to know what happens now.
Yeah, we got to move on like the way they moved on from Tom Paris. Like, it was there. It was there, and we got to deal with the fact that he was a criminal, and then it was just like, now we're on our...
And that was almost to Voyager's detriment. Like, I felt like the Maquis crew was just a part of Voyager by hour number 3, and it was a bit too smooth. But I think you're right. We need to have this group of new crewmates do this job, even if it is war, as boring and like when DS9 does war, we've had 3 years of loving these characters, and if a character gets maimed or dies in the line of duty on DS9, we cared. Yeah. We need to care, guys. You can't just kill them. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've decided then. Majority says that we've got Orville trekking, Star Trek wrecking. Let's see if next week works out a little bit better for Star Trek. It's not long now until we get our Jonathan Frakes directed episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Oh yeah, looking forward to that.
So maybe Jonathan Frakes...
We'll turn on the lights?
We'll turn on some lights. All right, well, here's hoping, everybody, that Jonathan Frakes turns on the lights. See you next week.